Any trades? Yep. I had a great weekend. Still in boil. Cool. All right, nine. Let's jump into it. There are futures. It's been a phenomenon that the futures push to the upside uh, during the market overnight session, and then this phenomenon is happening by and large by the Asian markets, uh, especially that whole China reopen story is playing in very well right now. And even if I'm not buying calls, I'm selling puts. And as the market moves to the upside, I'm capturing that put premium. That's all I'm trying to do. So and when the market pushes down, the or down or up, the premiums get juiced up, and combine that with a week full of events such as 13 tomorrow is CPI, after tomorrow is FOMC, and then we have OPEX on Friday. So the premiums are pretty juiced up, and I sold pretty decent premium for 3800s and 3775s, 710 for that 3800, and 410 for that 3775. Now they're up like 50%. I've closed both of them and looking to start the day with profits. So that's what is happening right now. So right now, the 15-minute chart futures hitting the 21, trying to bounce off of it. And as long as the futures are pinned below the 100 moving average here, I would not expect a bounce. But once it clears the 100 moving average and it clears about 39.47, again, they'll try to make a push all the way for 39.52. And to the downside, if it clears the 21, 39.44, then we're looking for a push downward, 39.42, and all the way into 39.40. We'll reassess the situation at 39.40. Very likely, if it breaks there, then very likely it's going to hit 39.37. Not really plotting anything below 39.37 as of now. 39.37 as of now, not plotting anything below that. On that would mean on the SPX side of things about 39.30, 39.27. uh, and then if it breaches there, we'll reassess the situation. Right now, let's go back to the mean on the hour is sitting about 39.38, looking for another bounce. If that fails, about 39.33, 39.30 area, that area should hold today. Expecting that area to hold. As of now, not really plotting anything below that area, 39.30, 39.27. To the upside, again, 39.50, 39.51 should act as pretty decent resistance. And expecting this to push again into this area, 39.50 area, and that clears 39.53, 39.54 should act as resistance, and not plotting anything beyond 39.57 as of now. That is the 50 moving average on the hour. If it clears there, then we'll reassess the situation. This is the immediate trade going in. Now, the larger picture is still intact here, which is this the 4 hour. Well, we'll come back to this later, but let's look at this larger picture. Now, if I were to be, just going by this chart, maybe an ephemeral bounce, but this green line is still pointing down, so we are still looking forward for the push down into 38.60. As of now, this is the tail end. I think if the market breaches below 39.30, then 39.05, 3900, then very likely it'll end up somewhere about 38.60. But not really plotting this as of now. We'll reassess the situation after 39.30 into 3900s. And if it breaches 3900, then we'll reassess the situation perhaps into 38.66. As of now, where we stand, this is not the plan, but we still need to respect these technicals. They are still telling us that there is still more weakness to the downside. Right. This chart is suggesting that there is a pretty decent support around 3920 area. So it has to hold this 3930 to 3920 area. I'm thinking it will hold this area, going by what as Williams are doing here. I'm thinking it will hold this area for now. If it breaches that area again, I think there is decent chance of it breaking that 3920 area. But as of now, we will stick with that 3920 as a support area. But whenever it breaches that area, we will look for further downside. Very well, looking into 3900 if that breaches 3860. Right about here, 3860, 3855. 3855 looks good. And on the weekly, very likely this right now the Bollinger Band is sitting at about 3860 area. I'm assuming that by the time the market starts to push down, the Bollinger Band will also be starting to pushing down, and then we'll end up somewhere about here if the market starts to push to the downside, 3850 area. But again, this is not the base case as of now. As of now, the base case to the downside is right about this line, 3920 range. So about 25 points to the downside. That is the base case to the downside. 3930 will be a pretty decent support area, and that if that pushes down 3927, and if that pushes down 3920 on ES, and so about 10 points down, 3910 on SPX. So that's the downward projection. And the upward projection is if it clears this 100 moving average, which is this pin below here, then 3950, then very likely it'll end up around 3960 to 3962. And if that clears, we'll be looking forward for a push into the 8 at about 3968 to 3970. Not really plotting anything beyond 3975 as of now. But even for that to happen, it needs to clear this very very important resistance, the 21 here at 3962 to 3965 area. It has to clear that. So that means we are looking for 20 points to the upside and 20 points to the downside. That's the range as of now. And whenever we see that's range break above that 3965 and to the downside 3920 on ES, then we'll reassess the situation into whichever way it is broken that resistance. If it breaches to the upside, the 21, then we'll look for a push all the way into the 8, around 3970. Then very likely a push, probably, it's going to overshoot another 5 points, 3975. To the downside, again, 3930, 3927, 39, sorry, 3930, 3927, 3920. That's the range that I'm looking at to the downside. Right. And we still, and for it to push to the 3920 range, it needs to deal with this 200 moving average right here. It has been acting as pretty decent support. And if I'm thinking that it'll come back down and it'll support it again, 3930 area, and it'll try to bounce there. Once it reaches below there, then we'll look forward for that 3920 hit. Right. And another thing here is this chart. We've been hammering about this chart, saying that once it clears this 200 moving average and the 100 moving average here. This is VIX, by the way, VIX weekly chart, and I've been saying that if it clears this 100 moving average, 200 moving average, then it's going to go hit this 8, and obviously it is hitting that. If it clears the 8, then we're looking for a push all the way into the mean. Mean should again act as pretty decent resistance, about 2940, 2950 area. That clears right about here. It's going to go hit this, and very likely again try and take a breather. Now, if you observe, both the futures and the VIX is up. So nothing wrong with that kind of setup in this kind of environment. What is happening is people are looking for a push to the upside, and as well as people are trying to hedge. So that is exactly what is going on here. So when VIX is nothing but put call ratio. So if you see there is what do you call uncertainty going into a certain event, in this case, in today's in what current week, right? So we have that CPI, FOMC, OPEX, and whatnot, and that's the reason people the it's uncertain, and people are trying to buy protection. And when people buy protection, VIX goes up. And at the same time, people are trying to look to the upside as well because of China reopen and the expectation for the CPI to come in lighter than expected. So both of those things are pushing to the upside. Now, very well, it's going to hit this 21 and starting to take a breather there. And if it clears there, very likely we'll see another hit of this 2950 area. If that clears, we're going to see a hit of 2640 area. We discussed this last week as well, and I'm still sticking with that same scenario for VIX. Right. So VIX has a pretty decent resistance around 2480 area, and if it clears there, we're gonna see VIX. I think absolutely 2550 looking like a pretty decent resistance here. By the time it's gonna hit this 2550 range, VIX on the daily would have been hitting the highs on the technicals. Right. Williams R is already out of the range here, so very likely these technicals will come into picture, and we still have this thing cross to the upside, MACD cross to the upside. Very likely it's going to clear this number, hit this number, starting to take a breather. And if the technicals start to take effect here, and then you see the five is sitting all the way down at 2290, so we can expect some sort of a breather here. Breather, if it pushes, if it takes a breather from right here, I'm expecting it to come back down into this second one standard deviation right about 2369. And if that breaches, it should come down into 2293. As of now, this is where the technicals stand. I'm still thinking there is a bit of upside for VIX. Perhaps the upside very likely will last into 2480 and then very likely into 2550 to 2560. As of now, I'm plotting nothing beyond that. But even if it does clear there, then I'm absolutely I'm not plotting anything beyond this 2650, which is the 200 moving average, 50 moving average. This should stop it right about here. The 200 moving average and the 50 moving average. I'm thinking the VIX should stop right about here at 2550, 2560. If that clears, then looking forward for 2650 area, absolute stop. Uh, and we'll reassess the situation right about here, 2449, 2459, 2460. Right? So that's what I'm looking at for VIX. And if VIX starts to take a breather to the downside, I'm thinking the rally would extend perhaps into 4,000. As of now, that's not the case. Rally to extend into 4,000. That is not the case at all. Let's go into VIX 1 hour. 1 hour is obviously overbought here, right? Overbought all around. So very likely we'll see a breather. Breather, same thing. Five, if five breaches, then eight. And if eight breaches, 21, 21 breaches, the mean. 2320 around that area is the mean as of now. And then mean could go up as the data comes in. And then we'll watch what happens here with the eight, with the five and the eight. But I'm expecting this to take this path again to the downside, and again after that we'll push to the upside. So this looks like a cycle, and we'll see what is happening with other indicators. Today I'm expecting it to be a very tight range because there's not much going on today. Tomorrow expecting a volatile day, and this week I'm expecting about 3 to 5%. I was at 3 to 3.5%, but looking at what the data is suggesting, the way that VIX is moving, probably 3 to 5% move for the week. And then that's the straight line of thinking. And if you want to be a contrarian, then you can think about because majority of the people are thinking in a 3% to 5% range of SPX. SPX might actually not move that much. That's a contrarian view. 1.5 to 2% for the week, right? And so that the premiums get crushed both sides. So I am situated both ways. But probably towards the end of the day, I will probably put on the trade for tomorrow's CPI again. The same thing that I did with PPI, both sides, playing both sides. I'll have positioned on the both sides, buying side of things, and then as the day goes by, not the day goes by, and as and when the data hits tomorrow, I'll be looking to sell for maximum premiums again. So that's and then I think last time some of the people tried to sell some premiums into the event. What was the event? Fed's Powell's speech, I think, and then the market pushed 3%, and some of us lost money selling those premiums. And I would advise against, if you don't really have a good grasp of how to deal with that stuff, I would advise selling. I would advise against selling premiums into any sort of news-related day or news-related week, right? So stay clear of that. And again, the market will outlast both you and I. So let the week pass. We'll look into the next week for selling more premiums, if that's the way, if that's your trading style. Right, but I'll be engaging on both sides, buying puts, buying calls, or rather spreads, and then I'll also be looking to sell premium once the IV hits the max. Right. Okay. And let's get into 10 year. So the expectation from 10 year is to keep moving down, and very well, if it breaches down here, 0.52, very well, the expectation is for it to hit this number, 3.42 again, and we'll look for another bounce there. Now, what is happening is this RSI was trying to bounce, but then we did not get that clear bounce on the Fibonacci side of things, the average side of things. Now the average is trying to bounce, right? The average is trying to bounce. So this time you want to keep a clear eye on this. If it clears the 5, then we want to test the 8, and if it clears the 8, then we can pushing for 2.994 to the upside. So the 5 is sitting right about here, 3.66. That clears about 3.72. And then we'll reassess the situation after the 5. But to the downside, if it clears the mean and the 21 here, both are pretty decent supporting areas. At breaches, we are going to look for 3.39, 3.42, then 3.39. That breaches, then we're going to push all the way into 3.11. Now, this again all depends on how the Fed would put across their message. Right now, what is baked in is a 50 bips, and then going forward another 25 bips. And if Fed sticks to that plan, and if market thinks that Fed, is on a stable path, then very likely the VIX will start to come down, rather collapse, and for good reasons. So VIX would collapse for good reasons, that we have stability, and we can actually, understand where the interest rates would, kind of end up. And the China reopen story is happening, or going pretty smooth, and that's also will have an effect on VIX. That should push the VIX down. And as of now, the war in Europe, that is not really at the center stage, because uh, the expectation for that whole energy crisis have come down. It's not going to affect this year. Very likely that's a next year story. 2023 fall, 2024 winter. That's the story into next year. So I'm not really bothered about that story as of now, but going into the second half of next year, that will be a much more bigger story than anything else. China, rather, Europe goes into crisis with its rather energy crisis. Europe goes into energy crisis, that will have a pretty decent impact on energy prices around the world. But that's a next year story. Not really looking into that as of now. As of now, the Fed and the China story are the two main stories. If the Fed, gives us a smooth path for the interest rates, then VIX will start to come down. And as of now, the China reopen story is intact, and that is having a pretty decent effect on futures every single night. So that story is playing out very nice, and the liquidity part in China, the banks are trying to push, the government is trying to push liquidity, inject liquidity into those property developers, and that is all happening. That is trying to get smoothened out. So VIX for now should calm down, barring any unforeseen commentary tomorrow or day after tomorrow from the Fed chair. Right. So, right, let's go here, the same path, same data on the day. If it clears here, right about here, 3.60, looking for a push all the way up into 3.65. We'll see what happens here. If the MACD starts across to the upside, then we'll have it will start to form a trend to the upside. Then the trend should last into the mean. The mean reversion should happen probably, I don't know, today, tomorrow. Expecting tomorrow, if CPI comes in hotter than expected, then it will clearly blow past through this mean about 3.65 and start to push into 3.70 and very likely end up somewhere about here, 3.83 to about 3.86. Yeah, and we'll look for a breather around here. And if CPI comes in lighter than expected, expect it to come back down, breach this 3.51, and start to push down into 3.42. Very well end up the day somewhere about here, at 3.43, 3.38, somewhere about here. And if that breaches, obviously we're looking for further push to the downside, very likely here into 3.22. Right. Till here, till a couple of days back, the 100 moving average was acting as pretty decent resistance for the 10-year, and now it is acting as support. It is hitting the support and bouncing off of that. Until the time this support is broken to the downside, then I'm not expecting further more downside unless this 100 moving average is broken. So I think today's price action will revolve around this 100-day moving average for US 10, and that should put the markets in tight range. Right, let's look at DXY. DXY, I'm still expecting it to push to the again. Right now, as of now, DXY is also waiting on CPI and FOMC. CPI tomorrow, FOMC. Everything is probably waiting for that same thing. And if CPI comes in hotter than expected, expect this thing to push all the way up here to 108, perhaps 108.70, the mean reversion on the week. So the way the path it's going to take is again 105.70, that clears about 106.60, that clears 107.30, probably another breather here, but it should push all the way here into 108. And this is if CPI comes in hotter than expected. Then if the Fed announces 50 bips and then going forward they say 25 bips, then it'll start to calm down. So that's what I'm watching with DXY. And CPI comes in lighter than expected. I'm expecting it to push all the way down here and very likely breach this 104.13 or wherever this line would be, the black line, the 50 moving average in the week. Expecting it to breach that and expecting it to push into this line. Where is that? Right about here. 102.17 to perhaps 101.70. Within this range, if CPI comes in lighter than expected, I'm expecting it to push very likely into this range going forward. And obviously, if DXY comes down, the first thing you want to look at is what is that thing called gold, right? The precious metals trade that will be alive, and gold was about 16 something. Now it's 18 something based on this chart. And watch this 8 below 21 still intact on the weekly. And for it to clear that, it will take the CPI and FOMC both. So if CPI comes in again, if CPI comes in lighter than expected, expect the DXY to push down. If some CPI comes in hotter than expected, expect CPI to push to the upside. Right, and probably today we'll see some sort of a bounce on CPI. We are still tracking this MACD crossover on the daily. If MACD crosses up, and this line, the 200 moving average, I'm still expecting it to be a pretty decent resistance for DXY. Again, the same thing, 5, 8. If 8 clears, then we're looking for a push all the way into 105.70. I don't think this is a story for today. We'll leave this story for tomorrow. But again, keep a watch on the 5 and the 8. This is still pinned below the 5 and 8 on the daily, right? The trend is still intact. Let's see here. Very likely we are getting into this situation with the DXY, where DXY is kind of getting oversold, oversold, oversold. You might expect a bounce. Again, the same thing, 5, 8. If that clears, the mean is sitting at about 104.96 to 105. Not really plotting anything beyond this 105 line, right about here. Let's say 105, yeah. 105, not really plotting anything above 105 for DXY. If it clears there, we'll reassess the situation perhaps into 105.12 to 105.14. So yeah, to the downside, very likely again 104.60 area bounce sort of a situation. It is getting oversold, so it will be looking for anything to bounce. Right about here. If it breaches 104.65, then very likely we'll see again a push into 104.10. But this is not the base case as of now. Base case is a bounce around here, 104.65, somewhere about there. Let's get into oil. Uh, Oil is still not a data point, but we are still looking at oil to push all the way into 65. Maybe not a story for today, maybe a story for a later time, but this is what is happening for oil. Until here, we were clear about oil that it's going to come back down and hit this number. Very likely, it's going to breach this number because the I still see this MACD cross to the downside here on the weekly. Very likely, it's going to go hit this 63, 64 number. But I think this is not a story for today. I think the story for today should be either a push around this 70 to 80 area, 70 to 50 to 70 to 80 area. If that clears, then we'll reassess the situation. Let's see, where is that? Right here. We'll reassess the situation perhaps into 76.20. Still not really expecting $4 move in Apple, $4 move in oil, but still keep that as a bounce candidate. If you don't want to get involved, just stay away from oil, perhaps into 65 to 63 area, and then we'll look for a pretty decent bounce there, or to hold, at least to hold right here. Looks like, yeah, oil will bounce very likely into short-term trade 73. That clears 74.15, right about here. 74.15 to 74.50. 5, then 8. Same story. Looks like it wants to bounce here. The RSI is trying to bounce, and it is bouncing off of good levels. So very likely it should push all the way up into 73. And if oil starts to stabilize and push up into 73, I think the market should stabilize alongside with oil. Let's get into Apple now. Apple on the weekly is still weak. Looking at these technicals, we still have weekly weaker Apple, but this is hitting. This is staying within a pretty decent range. One standard deviation. It is not looking to push down into the second standard deviation. Tomorrow, who knows what goes on? Higher than expected CPI, very likely it'll push down. Lighter than expected CPI, it'll probably push to the 150s, and that's not the thing that I would like to see. The downside, 140.36 for Apple. Very likely, if I don't think Apple is going to be, doing, or rather, anything is going to be making any pretty big moves today. I don't think so. But I think the market will be range bound. But still, let's chart Apple 140.45, 140.50 to the downside, and to the upside 143.20, and not plotting anything beyond 144 for Apple as of now. I think if that clears, I don't know if it's going to clear this 8 on the daily. Looking at what is going on, I don't believe it's going to happen. But if it does clear 144, which is the 8 on the daily, then we're looking forward for a push all the way into the 50 and about here 145.50. 50 EMA, 50 MA on the week on the daily, and then 21 on the daily, about 145.50. Not this would be an extreme case if Apple hits that. Not really plotting anything to that, but we'll reassess this. Let's reassess the situation after the 8 is cleared. I think we're running out of time here. Let's quickly jump into Apple here. Yeah, looking like Apple is trying to bounce. If it clears this 50 moving average and the mean is sitting about 143, let's see Apple test this 143.40, 143.50 area. That clears, very likely I'm expecting Apple to hit 143.70, 143.80. Take a breather from there, and if if it reaches this number again, 143.80, then I'm looking forward for a push all the way into perhaps 144.50. But 144 should act as very, very, very decent resistance. But if 144 clears, then 144.50, then 144.70, then very likely 145. This is not the base case though, but this is the base case. Right about here, 143.80 is the base case. If it clears here at the mean 142.90, 143, then we are looking at a push all the way into 143.70, 143.80. All right, 1 minute to open. Let's move into live trading.